This week I'm only reading Jane Austen. A couple of weeks ago at the bookstore, I was looking on the shelves and I saw the most beautiful prints of some of the classics I have ever seen. I'm not a big book collector, like I'm not someone who necessarily just buys a book because it's pretty. Like I have to love the book to buy it. Having said that, I've only read Pride and Prejudice. I know she's got others, but these were the main 4 that were on the shelf and I was like, I want to display them in my house. So this week we're gonna go through all of these Jane Austen books and we'll see if I come out the other end hating marriage and men or both. The only one that I have read from Jane Austen is Pride and Prejudice. I believe I've read Emma, or at least half of it, because I have a copy of it and I've cracked the spine and I've gotten into it, but I don't think I really remember what it was. So Pride and Prejudice is the only one that I've read before. We're not going to start with that one. I know I love this book. Should we start with one of the little ones? I think we'll start with Persuasion. I'm about a quarter into Persuasion and I'm loving it. Like this one's only 200 pages. Like it's dense. Obviously like the writing is not modern writing and so it does take a little bit longer for me to like read a sentence. I really have to pay attention to it. I absolutely adore the brutality of the way these people speak to each other. I should give you a little rundown of what it's about, but I'll go inside because there's traffic noise. Hi. Sorry, I was watching Mythbusters. I randomly got a recommended for like a Breaking Bad episode of Mythbusters, so you know what? I might actually just leave that on for you. I understand our attention spans have really gone downhill as of late, so if I can't give you Temple Run, I'll give you some Mythbusters in the background. I know you can't really see it because it's focused on me, but you get what you're given. Also, Rat just burped. It's all happening. So, Persuasion. I feel like once you start reading Jane Austen, it is a bit jarring at first. As I was saying on the balcony, it's not modern English and your brain does have to do a little bit more to kind of make it make sense for you because it's not like they're talking in tongues, but sometimes it really does feel like they are. Like they're saying the most simple thing in today's language, but the way that they used language back then, particularly with writing, it's like English, thanks. But once you get into it, you get into a flow. Like I'm in a flow state now and I actually didn't want to put it down to tell you what it's about, but that's a good sign. We've got essentially a family headed by one of the he's the epitome of vain, this father. It's hysterical. He is so preoccupied with whether his daughters are pretty, the status of people. Like there was a very funny part where someone asked him if he knew like a guy. Right? They were like, oh, did you know this guy who lived in, this town? And the person who's telling him about it couldn't remember this guy's name. But, he's asking the father. He's like, I can't remember the name, but do you know them? They did this, that, and the other. Anyway, someone finally volunteers the name. And the father's like, oh, I do know him actually. You threw me though, because you used the word gentleman, and I know him as a peasant. Like he's that elitist that he uses language, he speaks like that. It's very funny. But there are 3 daughters under this father, and one of them is called Elizabeth. Let's start the Elizabeth tally. I don't know how many Elizabeths are in the Jane Austen body of work, but got my first right here, and I know there's one coming up later. Also very funny, the father just unabashedly has a favourite daughter, and he speaks of the others, like one of them, honestly giving Meg from Family Guy vibes. Not that she's like not visually, but like it seems like the whole family is fine if she just does her own thing and doesn't bother them. And he talks about her as if it's like, she was pretty, but then she got really gross and ugly and I got the ick and now she's not a good daughter to me anymore. Anyway, where we start in the book is that this father and the eldest daughter, Elizabeth, or maybe not eldest, but his favourite daughter, Elizabeth, they're a bit of a tag team. Mary, another sister, she's off and married. And Anne is our Meg from Family Guy. She's just kind of like unwanted. But they've got money troubles. As, that's relatable these days. I don't know about you guys. That rent doesn't pay itself, does it? No. And so they work out that they have to let their house out, they have to rent their house out and go and live somewhere else for a little bit. Again, a hysterical kind of situation for the father because he's like, well, I'm not renting it out to anyone. In fact, don't advertise it because if anyone knows I'm renting my house and that I have money troubles, I might die. He's very dramatic. Oh, so is Mary, one of the sisters, one of the great hypochondriacs. I am thinking that our main character is Anne, unwanted Meg from Family Guy. She had a little bit of a love affair with someone earlier on, like 8 years ago from the start of this book. Someone close to her family didn't think it was a good match, and so they told Anne, like, oh, you shouldn't be with them, like, you'll let him down kind of thing, like, you should let him go because he can do better than you. This was a lie. Like, the person who persuaded her was lying to her because she was just like, I just don't think this is a good match. Ironically, it was. They were in love and she broke off the engagement, and then they kind of just never saw each other again until he comes to visit the house where she's staying. Honestly, it is so relatable. I feel like this is going to be an ongoing theme throughout this video as I go through these books. What was I just talking about? Guys? Quick, go to the comments below. Tell me what I was just talking about. It must have been really important, clearly. Oh, that's right. I've got it. Thank you so much, guys. I've got it now. I've got it. Didn't even need you. The way that everything around us may have changed and the way that we live our lives may have changed, but something that has remained the same is ultimately the human experience and how we go about things like love and jealousy and longing. She's still in love with this guy. She doesn't know, but he's still a little bit hung up on her too, but they're avoiding each other. They don't want to have anything to do with each other because the other one thinks the other one doesn't like them, kind of thing. I'll read you this part. They had no conversation together, no intercourse but what the commonest civility required. Once so much to each other, now nothing. There had been a time when of all the large party now filling the drawing room at Uppercross, they would have found it most difficult to cease to speak to one another. There could have been no two hearts so open, no tastes so similar, no feelings so in unison, no countenances so beloved. Now they were as strangers, nay, worse than strangers, for they could never become acquainted. It was a perpetual estrangement. You may have been through something like this. I know I have, and the way that it is articulated over 100 years ago is still true to the feeling and the experience of longing, essentially. I'm gonna yap myself and all of us to sleep right now if I don't shut up. So I'm gonna keep reading this and I will come back to you later, maybe when I finish it, to be honest, because it's not a big boy and I'm really like powering through it at the moment. I'm loving it. Okay, it is 20 past 12. I just finished Persuasion. That was excellent. I loved that. I'm gonna sit with it overnight, but I will see you in a couple of seconds tomorrow morning. So, I loved this. This was a 4.5, just a quick slay from Jane Austen, really, if you ask me. She really just got in, reminded you how good of a writer she is, and then got out. This was funny, the prose was beautiful. As I guessed before about our main character being Anne, Anne was our main character and she was just fantastic. It ended up being like a very clear showing that she is the only sister kind of with a head screwed on straight. Elizabeth was completely like conceited, like her father's daughter, and Mary was so funny, oh my god. As I said before, one of the great hypochondriacs. Mary needed absolutely everything to be about her. She was upset if any man thought that someone else was pretty but didn't also mention that she was pretty. Like, it was just very funny. Man, this was just fun. And what a great place to start. Like, I had absolutely zero expectations going in. I was just kind of intrigued. This was so fun and so enjoyable and so good that I'm like, wow. Like, I know Pride and Prejudice is amazing, so like, what about Emma and Sense and Sensibility? I'm excited. Anyway, we know that this was the subject material for the movie Clueless, and if you didn't know, now you do. So I'm intrigued to see how that kind of comes together because I love the movie Clueless. Knowing a lot of the characters, I'm going to do my best to kind of, I suppose, remove myself from the movie because I feel like that's only going to ruin it for me if I'm just constantly expecting or waiting for it to line up with the movie, given that the movie was made in the 90s and is very much set in the 90s. Wait, hey Siri, when was the movie Clueless released?
Clueless is a 1995
95. I'm gonna try and just read this as if it's just a fresh book and we'll see how we go. But that's the other thing I'll say about when I was reading Persuasion. These, they're hardbacks, but they're almost like softbacks. I'm not sure what the industry term is. The book covers are like leather. It is so enjoyable to read and hold, and I'm loving it. If all books were printed like this, I wouldn't own a Kindle. Like, well, okay, that's a lie. I love my Kindle. I know this video isn't about the convenience of Kindles, but I just want to make one quick note. Ever since I've religiously been a Kindle user, it has made me realize that I can only read physical books during the day. Once the sun goes down, it is so much harder to read a physical book. Piss off, Nat. Dude, I bought soil from Bunnings recently and it had gnats in it, and for the past like 2 months I've been trying to get rid of them, and we're so close to the end, but every now and then one slips through the cracks and it comes to piss me off. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, once the sun goes down, it is so annoying to try, because you have to move basically your entire reading setup to somewhere where there's a, you know, a big light behind you or near you, and it's just so not as cozy. I don't know. But I wish more books were printed like this. This is so nice to hold. Later, I'm also going to the park with my friend Asia for a little reading date, and it is a really nice day today, so I am looking forward to it. We have another Elizabeth, guys. Add it to the Lizzie tally. Okay, I'm about 100 pages in at present, and to be honest, for the first like 50 pages of this book, I was really struggling to remove myself from the movie. I know I said I was going to do my best to not think of the movie while I was reading this book, and I was trying, but it was kind of tricky. I haven't seen Clueless in a little while, so I was like, I think my brain just automatically latched on to subject material that I already knew. It's very different to Clueless, like in a lot of different ways. The main crux of the story is obviously the same, but I'm trying to lose myself in the writing and just forget that there was ever a movie made, because I don't really know how to put it into words without it sounding stupid. But it's like, I know what's gonna happen, and so it's making it harder to read, which is absurd in my brain given that I love to reread books. I could reread Harry Potter like every year, and Twilight. I'm rereading Game of Thrones at the moment. Like, I love a reread. I have no issue with knowing what's happening. For some reason I do with this. I don't know why. I'm not as engrossed in this one as I was with Persuasion, but I think I might just have to get a little bit further into it. Do I need to explain the plot of Emma to you? It's a like, the back is like, can you imagine anything nearer perfect beauty than Emma altogether? She's just basically this perfect girl with a doting father, and she's very good at manipulation, like very good at driving a conversation away from touchy subjects that might upset the people at the table or just like upset the decorum of the event in general. And she fancies herself to be quite the matchmaker, and so she's kind of just running around making a match with people. Now, I know the plot in that she tries to match two people together, and it turns out the guy is actually in love with her, not the person she's trying to match them with. I'm gonna keep going, and I will update you in due course. Thank you. Stop. I'm 120 pages in, and I'm into it now. I think I got far enough into it that it separated itself from the movie in my brain, and these people are their own people again within the context of this book, and I'm enjoying it. It's definitely a little slower, but her writing is just great.
obviously. She writes such beautiful and yet cheeky prose that is really entertaining to read. And the human experience, really, like the same as Persuasion. There's a lot of times where you completely forget that this was written many, many, many years ago. The human experience hasn't changed when it comes to relationships at all. We finished Emma last night. I am so glad I read this, but at the same time, like, I'm kind of glad it's over. I give this one a 3.5, and I have notes, that's right. I have all these grand ideas for like what I want to do when I next hit record, but then I hit record and the wheels fall off and I forget. Anyway, where were we? So yeah, as you saw earlier, I was struggling to separate the movie from the book for a little bit, but that got better. About 70 to 100 pages in, I started getting a little bit more into it. Emma's conniving was very funny. She was just constantly plotting something, and she was so good at like manipulation and putting people's spirits in the right place to serve her own goal that I was kind of like, damn, like I should pick up some tips from this, but also, is that bad? Like, Miss Bates has a degree in Yaponomics. She's kind of like a secondary character, like a neighbor of Emma and the Woodfords. Emma's family, she's a neighbor of them. She would literally yap for, I reckon I can just scroll and I'll open up to a, yeah, literally. So this is a pretty mild example of it, but she starts yapping from here all the way down to here. And then she kicks off, it has a quick break, kicks off again. Like she would yap like she gets paid for it. To be fair, if I got paid to yap, you wouldn't hear me shut up. She was funny. I literally updated my Goodreads at some point when I was like halfway through or something, being like, Miss Bates has a degree in Yaponomics. There was a chapter, what does it say? Page 337, where they all go and eat dinner at like Box Hill. They have a day out together at like a nearby manor or, you know, Abbey or whatever the fuck it's called. There was this like very funny scene to me where they're sitting down to dinner and Emma and her like companion at the time just sitting there being like, no one is talking, like how do we get them to talk? He says to Emma, our companions are excessively stupid, what should we do to rouse them? Any nonsense will serve, they shall talk. And then he announces to the room, ladies and gentlemen, I am ordered by Miss Woodhouse, Emma, to say that she desires to know what you are all thinking. And everyone kind of laughs and someone's like, are you sure you want to know what we're thinking? And then he comes back again and he's like, I am ordered by Miss Woodhouse to say that she waives her right of knowing exactly what you may all be thinking of and only requires something very entertaining from each of you in a general way. Here are 7 of you besides myself, and she only demands from each of you either one thing very clever, be it prose or verse, original or repeated, or 2 things moderately clever, or 3 things very dull indeed. But then it ends up being like quite an important scene because she kind of puts her foot in it and tells Bates that she talks too much and like, I don't know. I give the overall book a 3.5 because while I undoubtedly have given books of lower quality a higher rating than that, for sure, my ratings are pretty much solely based on my enjoyment of the book. Things like writing quality does come into that because whether a writer is like writing in the right style, obviously for you, like you're going to enjoy the book more. But ultimately my enjoyment of the book sits at a 3.5. To be honest, I think it dragged a little bit for me. I got a little bit bored here and there throughout, but I am glad I read it and it is definitely a good tale. I will say though that I just wish I've never seen Clueless. And also the title of the movie Clueless is like perfect now. I've never thought of it before, but like Emma and everyone in the story pretty much is like utterly clueless. It's like the perfect word to sum up the human experience when it comes to love. Like for the most part, we have no idea what's going on for everyone else around us when it comes to like who they feel for or who they aren't feeling for and what everyone's objections are for who they want to date and stuff. Now I have a degree in Yaponomics. Let's move on to the next book. Hello. Finally, we have Sense and Sensibility. This one has yellow spade edges, which will be a nice change. Just over 300 pages long. Let's see how I go with this one.
I'm about a third of the way into Sense and Sensibility, and so far we've got a pretty standard Jane Austen plot, you know, given being that I am now almost a bit of an expert on the topic. We have a family of a mother and 3 daughters, and they relocate because where they were living before was with the, like, it's kind of hard to explain, but the daughters, right, their half-brother. But the half-brother married, and his new wife kind of wanted them out in, like, the most polite way that she could say it. And now they've moved to a different area of the countryside, and we have some kind of love interests. I don't really know where it's going, but I trust Jane. I trust my girl. I will say though, I'm getting a little bit fatigued with, it's not really the writing. I suppose it's like, I'm just a bit fatigued with the overall like content of the books. It's not bad. It's not boring. I think I'm just, yeah, you know, like the Elsie Silver problem. Like individually, the books aren't awful, but when you read them all back to back in a short period of time, yes, you get a little bit tired.
It's time for a mid-chapter rage! Alternate title for this book, Men Ain't Shit. I'm like halfway through the book, I'm literally halfway through a chapter, and something has just happened that I'm just like, it just perfectly epitomizes the experience of being a young woman and you're just longing. You really like a guy and he is showing you excuse me, sorry, I'm very like physically distressed by this book. He's showing you all the right signs and everyone around you is like, they're gonna be a thing, they're gonna be an item, they're so in love. And then one day he turns around and he's like, I don't know who you are. In fact, women can be so strange. Where have you gotten this idea from? Get help. I feel for them because it's written in a way that it's like you completely understand. And I'm turning the pages knowing that something like this is going to happen. Like I just had that feeling. I'm like, he's fucking ghosting you, brother. He's ghosting you, girl. And then it happens and I'm like, no! On another note though, the characters are all superb. The book itself really, like plot-wise, it's kind of just like young girls trying to get married, as like a lot of Jane Austen kind of is, but in her own cheeky way. Every character that comes into play is fun. Even if nothing is particularly happening that is making you go like, oh, I want to see what happens next. It's more like you see a character come into play and you think, okay, how's this character gonna shake things up for everyone? Because everyone's dialogue is different, everyone's perceptions and expectations are different, and I'm particularly enjoying the like forced cordiality, like when you're being cordial with someone. I don't really know if I've used the right word there, but like it's very clear how the forced politeness and the undertones of being a bitch, basically. Like it's very funny. I don't know if I've explained this correctly, but there are some gems in here that I laugh when I'm reading it because it's funny. It is genuinely funny. Okay, we finished Sense and Sensibility. That was pretty good and pretty enjoyable. It was kind of on par with like Emma, but it was definitely funny. There was definitely very funny moments in it. And I did enjoy it, so I give it a 3.5. Colonel Brandon, MVP, alternate title, Men Ain't Shit. Yeah, not much else I can tell you about that one. I do recommend it though. A few little love triangles and things like that. It was fun. It was definitely fun to read, but I'm ready to move on to the next one. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it gives me utmost pleasure to say, let's fucking go. Honestly, I cannot remember the last time I read Pride and Prejudice. I know I had to read it in school in year 7, and to that I just say, education is wasted on the youth. Like obviously the old chestnut youth is wasted on the young, or young, yeah, whatever it is. Youth is wasted on the young, on the youth. I don't know. Education is wasted on the youth, because if you told me when I was 13 years old, 12 years old, that I would read Pride and Prejudice and have to study it and talk about it and write essays on it today, I'd be like, when do I start? But now we get to do it for leisure. Jesus Christ, this is so good. I always forget. I'm like borderline gonna go non-verbal reading this because I don't have anything to say to you. No, I'm not gonna sum up the plot for you. Okay, fine. How do I describe this masterpiece? We have the Bennets. Elizabeth Bennet is our main character. She is one of like fucking 700 sisters, and they need prosperous marriages in order for the family to like even just keep its house kind of thing. It's hysterical. The mother is the best. Mr. Bennet, the father, is like the ideal father. And I get butterflies anytime the words Mr. and Darcy are used together in a sentence on the page. What can I say? I'm just a girl. I'm gonna keep telling you the plot though. A guy named Mr. Bingley comes to town and he's a very agreeable, amiable man. One of the Bennets, Jane, becomes the object of his desire. And this is fantastic news for everyone involved. But he has a friend called Mr. Darcy. Need I say more? The original grumpy boy. I am 143 pages in. I'm just smiling reading it. Like, I will read a page and just be like, it's the best. Hey team, so yes, prejudice. I can't explain to you how obsessed I am with this book. I can't put it down. My heart rate is rising. I am currently on page 200, which is like this far through, and quite on set, thanks, Rat. If we could save the snorting for after the clip, that'd be... Thank you, my darling. I have nothing to say to you except that I love this book. I'm not gonna say that Jane Austen is an amazing writer. We already know this. I'm not gonna say that this is her best work. Ooh, I'm quite partial to it. I've been listening to my classical ambience. I have been cozied up here with the bean and just enjoying reading this book. It's so good. Also, I want to make an amendment to the rating I gave Sense and Sensibility. That's a 4. I gave it a 3.5, but I keep thinking about the characters even while I'm reading this, which tells me that is not a 3.5. I'm giving that one a 4. What you doing back there, huh? Stuff and things. So we've got 160 pages left, and I'll probably smash out another like 40 pages tonight, I think. I'm not sure. I'll smash out some pages tonight, I think, because I'm just like, I don't want to put it down. I don't want to go to sleep. Like, it's one of those books where you're like, you just want to finish it. Also, I got one of those reels suggested to me today. You know, there's Instagram accounts that are making movies, but in like portrait mode, where they're using AI to fill in the top and the bottom. I found one for Pride and Prejudice today, and I, just basically wanted to throw up all over my apartment. It's so beautiful. I love it.
This is by Lady Leah. I'm just a girl, alone in a park, quoting Surf's Up while reading Pride and Prejudice. The duality of woman. I don't want to finish this. I really don't want to finish it, but I'm probably going to finish it today.
If, however, your feelings have changed, I would have to tell you. You have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love you. I never wish to be parted from you from this day on.
Extremely annoyingly, I was just recording and my microphone wasn't plugged in, which is so annoying. But I just finished Pride and Prejudice, and so good. Easiest 5-star of my life. The character development is insane. A lot of the time when I read books
I don't really think about the character development unless it's quite poignant, and until the end of the book, and then I go, yeah, I guess, yeah, you know, oh, that person, yes, no, that person, whatever. But like, literally everyone in this story had some form of character development. Elizabeth, absolutely. Mr. Darcy, no doubt. Even Mr. Collins. And it blows me away. Every time I read this, I swear it gets better. If you have not read Pride and Prejudice before and you do like a romance, or maybe you like historical fiction, because this isn't historical fiction, but it's so old now that like it kind of falls in that category because it is a very different style of writing and it is fiction, so, you know, that works, but it's just so good. As I mentioned, I had to read it for school, and I think it was wasted on school kids. Like, truly, we didn't give a shit about it when we were 12, but as I get older, every time I read it, I swear it gets better. Obviously, we have to add our final Elizabeth to the tally, and also I noticed that Pride and Prejudice has a little initial here where none of the other books have, and it says ED, which on first look you might think stands for erectile dysfunction. Alas, I think it might be Elizabeth Darcy, which is a little bit of a spoiler, but I mean, like, where else is the book going to go kind of thing. They were very much romance novels when they were published. Much to ponder. So, we are now at the end of our journey. And we succeeded in reading 4 Jane Austen novels in 7 days. No, I don't hate men or marriage because I finished with Pride and Prejudice. No, I was never gonna hate men or marriage after reading Jane Austen. So my overall rankings for each, Emma got a 3.5 because I just felt personally it just dragged a little bit for me and I wasn't entirely engrossed in the story compared to the others. Persuasion got a 4.5. Absolute slay from Jane. Pride and Prejudice, easiest 5-star of my life, and Sense and Sensibility got a 4. I can't recommend reading classics more. If anything, it just goes to show that, as I've said multiple times in this video, while our way of life may have changed, our way of thinking about life has not. The human experience is just that, and isn't necessarily affected by modern technology or a change in the way we, you know, get to work by using a car, for example. I'm also just like proud of myself for reading this amount of classics back to back because it was a bit of a chore, but now I'm so excited to add more classics to my TBR. I definitely want to read the Bronte sisters, Charlotte and Emily? The Bronte sisters, let's just call them that. But if you've never read a classic before, you've never read Jane Austen, and I would recommend one of these to you to start with, I would definitely say Pride and Prejudice. In my opinion, it's the best. It's quite pacey. There aren't many parts of the book where you're bored. There's a little bit in like the 2/3 of the way through, it does slow just a tad, but the longing and the yearning remains, and that kind of carries you through. If not that, probably Persuasion. Honestly, that kind of surprised me. I really liked that one. But thank you so much for watching this video if you've gotten this far. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you'd like to connect on Goodreads, please feel free. If you haven't already and you feel so inclined, I would love it if you subscribed. But other than that, I hope you have a beautiful morning, afternoon / evening. Please circle whichever applies, and I'll see you guys in the next video.